Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have another great show for you today. I know how much our viewers love us discussing the weather here in D.C. It is a foggy, misty day, but I enjoyed scooting here on my scooter
did?
for the first time.
How could you see?
Weeks. Well, I don't need to see. I know these sidewalks and roads like the back of my hand.
I really worry about you on the
crack and
scooter.
crevice.
It's crossed my mind a couple times.
Well, I've only fallen off like 5 times.
Yes, and you told me hit by car doors and yeah, it's a lot of things.
I'm glad to be doing it again. I finally got my scooter back because it had been stolen for the second time.
Did you put a tracker on it?
Yes. So if it gets stolen again,
Investigator Robby on the scene.
There will be hell to pay. I will track you down. I will.
Do you mind telling him in the comments that's not a smart idea? I've already done that.
I will punch you for sport.
Coming up on Rising, a House Oversight Committee panel has voted to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi to testify about her handling of the Epstein Files.
Plus, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz testified Wednesday on Capitol Hill as part of a probe into his state's fraud scandal, and we're going to dig into that.
And HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says that Dunkin, Starbucks, and other companies need to prove that their ingredients are safe, but some were not happy about that. But first, Robby, I know you have a lot to say about that one, but what's on your radar?
I wasn't happy about that. Not happy about this either. Now, one of President Trump's favorite pastimes is bashing the media, and his White House keeps that tradition alive no matter the circumstances. See, for example, Karoline Leavitt tearing into CNN's Kaitlan Collins after the host asked about Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth bashing the media for covering American deaths to the strikes in Iran. Here was that exchange.
That's what these. Hegseth was complaining that it was front page news about these 6 service members who were killed. That's not what the secretary said, Kaitlan, and that's not what the secretary meant, and you know it. You know you are being disingenuous. There is not. We've never had a Secretary of Defense. Who cares more? Drones get through or tragic things happen. It's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad. Yeah, as you know, we cover the deaths of U.S. service members under every president. The press does only want to make the president look bad. That's a fact. Especially you. No, listen to me. Especially you and especially CNN. And the Secretary of Defense cares deeply about our war fighters and our men and women in uniform. He travels all across this country to meet with them, to connect with them, and your network has hardly ever probably reported on that. You also had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Chairman Kane, who's a brave patriot.
Now, I like to make fun of CNN as much as anybody else on the right, but here's the thing. Americans are dying as a result of Trump's decision to condone Israeli attacks that have killed Iranian leader Ayatollah Khamenei and decimated the leadership of the country. Iranians have fired missiles in response as their terrorist proxies are expected to carry out attacks, and we're not going to ignore our dead because it's inconvenient for the administration. To Colin's point, CNN has always covered American war deaths, and so have all other news networks. That's because it's important. Those deaths matter. They matter in their own right, and they should affect how we feel about this war effort, a war that was never voted on, nor even sold to the American people. We were simply informed it was happening after the fact. So yes, the media is going to ask the Secretary of War to justify American soldiers losing their lives, no matter how annoying that might be. The lives of our servicemen and women matter. Take, for instance, Declan Cody, a 20-year-old member of the Army Reserves who was killed in Kuwait on Sunday. Breaking Point's host Sagar Enjeti notes that Cody was a 20-year-old kid with his whole life ahead of him. He was born 4 or 5 years after 9/11 and died fighting in another war in the Middle East. He's not the first, and he won't be the last. Yes, sacrifices are made during war, and the brave men and women who put their lives on the line for our freedoms, they knew what they were signing up for. But we need to consider how many American lives we're willing to spend in pursuit of what goal precisely? Regime change? An end to Iran's nuclear ambitions? Israel's sense of security? What is it? The administration did not bother seeking our permission or Congress's permission to take these steps, so you better bet that the White House is going to have to field questions about it. You know, and I'm usually with them to bash mainstream media or whoever it is about unfair coverage, but that's such a cope in this case. It's not unfair. Americans are dying. American soldiers are dying who would not have come under attack except for this strike. That doesn't mean the strike is not worth doing. They signed up for this job, and we're going to lose lives in pursuit of reasonable strategic aims of the United States. But they're going to be asked about it, and they're going to be asked about it particularly because this was never justified to the American people. We were never sold on it. We were never walked through it. It was never voted on. So of course they're going to get questions, and their justifications are contradictory. So I was pretty irritated with her going into full CNN is out to get me kind of self-pitying nonsense.
That's the biggest thing. The answers are all over the place as to why we're actually in this war. And a big question is where it's going. So, not only did we talk about a little bit of the chaos of the people that are in the Middle East, whether it's for work or travel, that have a response after the fact when it's become chaos and they don't know how to get home. That's one instance. NATO's now involved completely because there was that ballistic missile that was headed towards Turkey. So now you got other countries involved. The whole Middle East is involved because they're trying to attack directly bases all over the Middle East that are hitting civilian targeted areas like Amazon and Dubai, the faculty. And so it's just a lot. The State Department is now telling people at all these bases to head back. And so we are just in a state of chaos across the world. It's really caused a decision, like you said, that we didn't vote on or wasn't sold to the American people is now affecting the entire world. And also I read in the New York Times today that regime change, if that is the goal, because again, we don't know what we're fighting for and have one accord about what that is also not likely because Ayatollah's son is actually who's being considered by the Iranian clerics to take the leadership role. So how does that change? How far is the son going to stray from what his dad wanted to do? And then we talked about the cost of American lives. Obviously, that is the biggest deal. And 20 years old was just tragic to hear somebody that young for something that wasn't explained to us. But there's also an actual cost to the idea that we are going to be in this embroiled conflict with Iran is the cost to the American people, which is not as important as American lives, but the gas prices have already gone up 20 cents from last week. So oil prices are already affected. And so when we look at the actual cost to American lives and then the actual real cost to the wallets of the Americans who wanted America first, a lot of people have questions, not just Kaitlan Collins. The whole country has questions about who does this benefit, what was this for, and what's the game plan and the strategy? Because there's chaos rippling throughout the country. And I think these are fair, nonpartisan questions that have to be answered with some kind of uniformity because there's this actual fear of the state of the country right now. You can see different people, the way they're communicating and talking about this because of the lack of leadership that's succinct. And I think that fear is warranted because a war without a cause or understanding leaves everybody to feel a little more vulnerable than they did a week ago.
Yeah. I talked to my mother on the phone yesterday. Hadn't spoken to her in a while. She'd been on vacation, traveling. And first thing she asked me was like, do you guys feel safe in D.C.?
Right.
I'm like, what are you talking about? She meant because of, are we going to face retaliatory military action as the nation's capital? This kind of stuff, it's on people's minds. And again, we got into this without any explanation of where it goes. You say maybe the Ayatollah's son's going to take over. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. What do they know? Have they thought through this?
Well, then there's this whole other layer that Iran is actually trying to negotiate a deal. Again, this is according to the New York Times. They indirectly reached out to the CIA about it. And so I want to know exactly what that deal looks like because, again, you talk about how the president hated Obama's deal. So I'd like to see the exact elements in this deal that make it so drastically different other than not compiling what's necessary to create a nuclear bomb because that was in the deal that Obama had.
Well, what's different is Trump gets to put his name on this deal.
Right, but the big difference is that now we've lost 6 and counting Americans because Trump wanted to put his name on it.
Yeah.
And so that's the real tragedy. The House Oversight Committee continuing its probe into the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Why they subpoenaed Attorney General Pam Bondi. Coming up, we'll be right back. The House Oversight Committee voting Wednesday to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi to answer questions about her handling of the Epstein Files.
Move to subpoena Bondi came not from Democrats on the committee, but from Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Mace wrote in part on X, AG Bondi claims the DOJ has released all of the Epstein files, but the record is clear that they have not. Videos are missing, audio is missing, logs are missing. There are millions more documents out there. We want to know why the DOJ is more focused on shielding the powerful than delivering justice.
The move comes just a week after reports that the DOJ improperly withheld some documents from the public that detailed one woman's accusations against Trump. The DOJ said it's looking into that. But several FBI interview summaries were also reportedly missing. Those interviews were reportedly conducted with an unidentified woman who claimed she was assaulted by both Trump and Epstein when she was a minor in the 1980s. And then this week, an analysis from CBS showed thousands of files were removed from the public view after being published. The DOJ says those documents are undergoing further review and will be republished soon.
Meanwhile, Bondi isn't the only one who the committee wants to hear from. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick voluntarily agreed to be interviewed by the committee earlier this week, and committee chair James Comer called on 7 others to give testimony in a post on X. Those include Bill Gates, former White House counsel Catherine Rumler, investor Leon Black, businessman Doug Band, billionaire Ted Waite, and 2 of Epstein's former aides, Leslie Groff and Sarah Kellen. Mace responded to that post, writing in part, quote, "This is a solid start. The Oversight Committee, however, needs to bring in more individuals." She went on to list dozens more names, vowed that more subpoenas are coming. It's unclear if and when any of those people Comer named will speak to the committee. As for Bondi, her office has not commented on the subpoena as of this morning. Look, this is Pam Bondi's mess to a great extent. She misinformed the public when she commented on this issue without knowing enough about it initially, when she released files that had already been released to random influencers.
I'm about to say, about a year ago, she started this with that binder.
She implied she had such a document as the Epstein client list,
right?
A document which does not appear in the files that were released. I don't believe that document exists, but she said it existed. I think she misspoke when she said. But
she can explain?
Well, sure. So she's going to have to, she can testify until the cows come home, to use a phrase Hillary Clinton used in her own deposition. That's fine. Do I think we're going to get at more information, really, that is pertinent that we don't have? No, but she messed this up, so go ahead and question her. And Howard Lutnick obviously should be questioned because of Nancy Mace's own line of questioning of Hillary Clinton was all about how she had a connection to Epstein that she didn't have, that Lutnick had. So given that she asked Hillary Clinton, who was another 6 degrees of separation of Kevin Bacon removed, then she's got to ask Lutnick about it because he was far more proximate. Now, I don't think it matters, and I don't think it points at new crimes that are coming to light, and I think this whole thing is so absurd, and Democrats are doing it to hurt Trump.
Nancy Mace pushed this forward. What do you... Stop. No, you can't do this all the time. You cannot take a Republican doing something like Thomas Massie or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Nancy Mace and say, oh, it's a Democrat. Like, that, no Democrat is telling these people how to behave. Marjorie Taylor Greene feels the way about the things she feels the way about. Thomas Massie feels the way about the Epstein Files. Nancy Mace is a survivor, she says, and so she is pushing for... This is what she says. This is what I'm telling you. That she said, right? She said it on the floor, so she's protected. So she is pushing forward with something that she would like to see happen. Why does that have anything to do with Democrats? I want you to really help me understand your mindset here.
I'm with our president, Donald Trump, and I would call some of these people in and tell them to drop this immediately, or they'll never get another kind word from him, and that's what I would do. But
I just think if we're going to keep saying that this is... Because your theory is that everybody wants to get Trump to be deposed
in a Democratic
and make this happen. Okay, so you can't still keep calling it a Democratic witch hunt if Nancy Mace brought to the attention that she would like to subpoena Pam Bondi.
It's a Democrat and Nancy Mace witch hunt.
And Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, come on. It's what are you saying? These people matter within the party, within the movement. They support Trump in a variety of other ways, most other ways, actually. So if they don't support the idea that we will let anyone operate with any kind of impunity that may have been entangled with Jeffrey Epstein in relation to a crime, that's okay with me. Why is it not okay with you? Pam Bondi needs to explain the information.
Nancy Mace's list. It is. I read the whole thing yesterday. It's just everyone who has ever sent an email to this man. Is this you're one to bring up? Is this what Trump should be focused on? Foreign policy. What about domestic? Is this what members of Congress should be focused on? That we're going to subpoena and interview? I mean, the Hillary Clinton one, the Bill Clinton one, that took 8 hours. They're going to spend the entire workday talking to every person who has ever sent an email to Jeffrey Epstein. Isn't there a budget to pass or something?
For sure.
You know what I mean?
I agree that everyone on that list probably doesn't need to be subpoenaed. But Pam Bondi, the fact that we haven't gotten here yet is ridiculous when she's at the helm. She's at the helm of the Jeffrey Epstein investigation.
We heard her before Congress just a few weeks ago.
Okay, but specifically people want her to talk about this in detail for 8 hours. No, she could spend the same 8 hours. If Clinton has to talk about this for 8 hours, then she should also have to talk about this for 8 hours.
Right. See, this is why they did the Clinton one, so that Republicans didn't.
No, they did it willingly. They did it willingly.
Right, the Clintons were willing to do it because it created an expectation that more Republicans would have to do it. And it was fine for the Clintons to do it because they didn't actually have any information to conceal or make them look bad.
There's further questioning,
especially Hillary.
There's further questioning for Pam Bondi specifically about political interference here. If there are ideas that now the way that these documents were mishandled, a lot of victims were harmed because the names were not redacted in the right way, but at the same time, you redacted President Trump and a bunch of other powerful men. For what reason? They want full explanations about why this was handed to you, because last time we heard her speak, she blamed the FBI, and now it's bouncing back to her. So what is it? Tell the real story. Why is it changing so much? One succinct story will probably leave everybody who has all these questions that wants to continue down this Epstein conversation more satisfied. And also just releasing the rest of the files and explaining why there's still millions that haven't been seen yet and why you're pulling 47,000, I think, off the website and putting them back. Like, it's just sloppily handled.
MAGA,
she is at the helm.
MAGA, if you're listening, just listen to me very carefully. There are false reports in these documents that Trump and Epstein abused some little girl.
Uncorroborated claims.
Okay, the claims are false.
The right
terminology
is
false.
Uncorroborated claims.
Okay, that's fine. They're false, and there are probably other files like that of crazy people making totally false accusations about Trump and Mickey Mouse and whoever. And that is what Democrats are seeking to put into the public. These false accusations. So, MAGA, I am speaking directly to you. That is what's going on. You have to discern that. That is what Democrats, why they are interested in this now. It is an opportunity to introduce falsehoods about Donald Trump into the public awareness.
So what is Thomas
That's
Massey's
what Congress
reason?
voted
So
for.
What is Thomas Massey's reason then? He wants to also embarrass Trump. Is that his whole goal in life? He's going to make his whole personality to do that?
I've said I think he has spoken with the alleged victims, and I think he believes their stories, and that's nice. I don't believe their stories.
So why can't one Democrat also be on the same accord as Thomas Massey and care about the victims? They're not saying that there's no bad actors in here that want to get the last laugh in some way. I'm saying there are a lot of people in Congress, and there are a lot of people that are involved in this. So you don't think that anybody else besides Thomas Massey has a good intention? And if they're a Republican, you just kind of wave them off, like Nancy Mace has an actual want to get to the bottom of this?
I don't know what Nancy Mace's motivations are. I'm explaining what are the practical consequences of this crusade that she is on. And the practical consequences are going to be bad for Trump, bad for civil liberties, and bad for just people being informed, because the information that is being released is in some cases substantially and obviously and maliciously false.
You are the person that berated the Biden administration for the fact that they policed information. True or false?
But this is
no matter what the information was, true or false. I'm just saying. So then, don't police information now, especially regarding
the government
potential sex trafficking.
Shouldn't seize your phone as the result of a investigation or a warrant, and then print out transcripts of every text messages you've ever sent and blast them over the internet. That's not the kind of transparency I'm for.
Well, the law requires it. The law that President Trump signed, it requires it.
Big mistake. Up next, ladies at The View got fiery after Elisabeth Hasselbeck. Remember her? She's back, and she was defending ICE and Trump's border policies. Don't go anywhere. The View's panel got a little testy on Wednesday after guest host Elisabeth Hasselbeck defended ICE and President Trump's border policies.
Now, Hasselbeck is temporarily filling in for Alyssa Farah Griffin, who's on maternity leave. The panel was discussing Kristi Noem's congressional testimony when tensions rose.
Hasselbeck defended the Trump administration's policies, citing current statistics on decreased fentanyl trafficking and border encounters. She then told her co-panelists she doesn't believe they're actually against border control in their daily lives, noting studio audience was vetted and had to go through security just to attend the show. Let's listen.
We need strong borders more than ever right now. We are being infiltrated.
But Elizabeth, can I give you on the border when Renee Good and Alex Peretti were murdered, and death is not a mistake. That was a murder. No,
that was a murder.
Now let me finish.
As were those killed by illegal immigrants.
Let's not be dismissive about the fact.
I'm not dismissive. I just said all their lives matter.
Hosts Sarah Haynes and Sonny Hostin then challenged Hasselbeck's defense and called Kristi Noem, quote, wholly unqualified for the job, and accused the administration of lacking empathy.
Hasselbeck added she believes in a, quote, nation of borders, and argued that media bias was responsible for the public's disapproval of ICE. Nice to see Elisabeth Hasselbeck
I know
back.
she was there from like 2003 to 2013,
Yeah,
I believe.
she was on Survivor, right?
Oh, was she?
You don't know this?
I didn't
She was in
follow
the
along. Go
second
ahead.
season, I believe, of Survivor. I used to watch. It's like in its 50th season. I haven't watched it in a couple
Wild.
years,
That's
but
the
I
most
used to.
successful show ever.
Well, it does 2 seasons a year. So
I know,
they
but
did
it's
like 25
still
years of it.
Yeah.
I used to watch it. I used to be really into it. I remember her being on. She was great. Everybody loved her. And it turned out she had a conservative views. So then she was on. Yeah, it was on The View. She was in combat, I think, about the Iraq War a lot with Rosie O'Donnell in that era.
Yeah.
And then they've gone through, Meghan McCain had the conservative chair for a while. She was very combative with the others. And it's Alyssa Farah Griffin now, who's a little bit more moderate in her presentation, maybe, than Elisabeth Hasselbeck. So it's been nice to have her back.
Some spiciness at the table.
Good points. But she's out of 2003 conservative, because they talked about Megyn Kelly and Candace, and she's like, she doesn't have anything to do with that, because she's pro-Israel and she's a more Bush era pro-war, pro-Israel conservative.
She's like
just funny to see
Hannity.
see her back. Yeah, like
Right?
Hannity.
Yeah.
But defending ICE and pointing out that this is a great point that gets made by conservatives, that nobody's defund ICE, abolish the police, says some Democratic congressperson who has security and lives in a gated community, and that kind of thing.
Look, I am specifically adamant that the Biden administration completely mishandled immigration and have been extremely critical of them for eternity.
Yeah.
I know that's exactly or part of the reason why President Trump succeeded in the last election. But I think there's a big difference between Republicans winning on border control when it comes to the actual border and the way that ICE has been controlling migration in this country. And I think that because polls have shown us recently that a lot of people don't like the tactics, which is, I think, what Sonny was alluding to, talking about people dying and the Americans that have, we saw this, Kristi Noem was testifying this week, and we saw that both Tom Tillis, Republicans and Democrats were criticizing her leadership. And that's what the table was discussing. Under your leadership, we've called Americans terrorists. We've jumped to conclusions. We caused chaos within cities. Was there a better strategy here?
Yeah, the strategy was for the local authorities to voluntarily.
But you keep saying that, and we keep going back in this circle. So you want to do this dance again. So Governor Walz says when Tom Homan came in that they had a conversation, and Tom Homan says, "Oh, we got to some conclusion." Governor Walz says we were already at that conclusion. We were allowing you guys into jails. We gave 2 weeks, like we're supposed to, mandated by the law.
Sanctuary cities don't exist.
They do. I lived in one in Denver, and I have multiple feelings about it.
Yeah.
But I'm just letting you know, Minnesota is standing firm that they haven't changed any policies in relation to ICE and immigration enforcement.
Let's just condemn the sanctuary city policies, and we can all dance together.
Next on Rising, while some Democrats are trying to block federal ICE agents at ballot boxes, President Trump seems to be shifting away from the facts and towards creating fear. Stick around for my lens.
Welcome back to Rising. Lindsay, what's in your lens today?
Let's get to it. Here's what's happening. As we head towards the 2026 midterms, some Democratic lawmakers are moving to block federal agents, specifically ICE, from being deployed at polling stations. They say the mere presence of immigration enforcement near voting sites could intimidate voters. The Department of Homeland Security insists there are no plans to station ICE agents at the polls, but the fact that this even has to be clarified tells you something about the current political climate. Now, Maryland Congresswoman April McClain Delaney is preparing to introduce a Democracy Without Intimidation Act, which is a federal law that, federal law does already bar the military from polling places and makes voter intimidation a crime. What it doesn't explicitly do is prohibit civilian federal agencies like ICE from showing up. This bill would close that loophole, making it a crime for senior federal law enforcement officials to deploy officers to polling stations. It would also restrict immigration enforcement in the 4 weeks leading up to a federal election unless there's individualized probable cause or an imminent threat. This push didn't come out of nowhere, though. Remember when former White House advisor Steve Bannon had this to say a couple weeks ago?
You're damn right. We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November. We're not going to sit here and allow you to steal the country again.
And then there's President Trump on the Dan Bongino show.
The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. the Republicans ought to nationalize the voting.
Now, those comments followed repeated claims from the president himself that non-citizen voting is widespread. I mean, these are claims he's made since 2016 when he said millions of, quote, illegal votes cost him the popular vote. And again in 2020 when he alleged tens of thousands of non-citizen ballots swung key states. But here's what the data actually shows. Illegal voting by non-citizens is already against the law. It's investigated and it's prosecuted. And there's no credible evidence that it has ever occurred at a scale large enough to impact any federal election. According to a bipartisan policy center analysis, the Heritage Foundation's election fraud cases database found just 77 instances of non-citizen voting between 1999 and 2023. That's a 24-year span. 77 cases over more than 2 decades out of billions of ballots cast. On Tuesday, Senator Chris Coons pressed DHS Secretary Kristi Noem during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. Noem said there are, quote, no plans to have ICE agents at polling sites, but she stopped short of completely ruling it out. Why not? On one hand, election integrity matters. On the other side, so does voter access and perception. Because democracy doesn't really rely on secure system, it relies on public confidence as well. When political leaders talk about surrounding polls with immigration agents, even hypothetically, it raises a real question. Who feels safe showing up? If there's no evidence of widespread non-citizen voting, then deploying or even threatening to deploy federal immigration agents near ballot boxes is not about security. It shifts the focus from facts towards fear. Now, if the goal is confidence in the system, then the approach has to be grounded in evidence, not rhetoric.
I mean, if there are no non-citizens voting, though, then what is the problem?
Well, there's a risk of voter intimidation. So sometimes if you're voting and you see an officer just hovering, we already ban any type of intimidation at the poll or federal officers by being near polls.
Intimidating if you're here.
Because you've watched ICE kill 2 Americans this year. So maybe some people just feel uncomfortable. They weren't illegal migrants. So there's a natural fear for some people. So just because Robby doesn't have that fear, that's okay. But some Americans feel uncomfortable with the tactics that have been seen as aggressive and the claims that have been said that they've been trained at a different level than years past, meaning that they lack the appropriate interaction training.
If I see police officers or guards, as we now do in D.C., we see authority, law enforcement personnel everywhere, I generally feel safer, more at ease.
That's you, though. That's why I said that's you. And you have a different experience.
So what I
exactly. So, but that's why we protect all citizens.
Doesn't.
No, we protect all citizens. Non-citizens aren't voting. I told you 77 in the last 24 years have actually voted. So you're going to make most citizens uncomfortable to find those 77 across the country over 24 years. I mean, yeah, a lot of people are uncomfortable with the idea. I mean, Alex Preddy and Renee Good were 2 Americans that were killed in the nation. There were protests all over. People agreed with ICE, people disagree with ICE. But the point is that ICE has been contentious, and polls have showed us that a lot of people feel like their tactics are too tough. And so therefore, people who've been accused of overly being aggressive already right now, we're in the middle of an investigation, figuring out where that aggression lies, should not be stationed at a place where people want to perform their civic duty. That's not the right tactic forward. So when people like Steve Bannon, who also suggests crazy things like Trump should run again, want to jump in the conversation, and then the president actually repeats what he says and says, oh yes, we should have perhaps think about federalizing these elections. No, we should not. The elections are run by states, and we should not have police officers unless they're actually over making sure the place is secure. We shouldn't have ICE officers there. We shouldn't threaten equal access.
Aren't making sure the place is
not according to
making sure the election is secure.
Not according to the American public. I mean, I'm looking at recent polling that shows that a lot of people think that ICE's tactics have gone too far. So therefore, people are not feeling more secure because we watched 2 Americans get killed.
Wait, there's no way to
we also saw a car chase.
The SAVE Act. Then we could pass the SAVE Act and then we'll be really sure everyone voting is an American citizen. And then you're right, we don't need, I mean, I still think it's fine to have police. It doesn't need to be immigration authority.
When you think about the SAVE Act, though, who are we trying to target here? 77 people in 24 years have been illegal
77 people
or not
were prosecuted.
Okay, that's what we have. That's the number to go off.
Well,
Even if you
okay,
double
some
it,
people-
140. What are we talking about?
Some
Over
people would read
decades.
that and go, oh my God.
This is from the Heritage Foundation, the one who created Project
You're
2025.
not listening to me. People would see that number and say, but I know there's more. So the fact that they only caught 77 people shows what a bad job they're doing of enforcement.
People who see that number should say it came from the same organization that created Project 2025 and say that the only reason why I'm inflamed with these tensions is because the president keeps lying about the last election and saying that in some ways it was stolen from him in 2020. And so people are riled up thinking that maybe migrants from all these different states have been the reason why he lost the election when he just lost. He lost to Biden. It's okay. He won again after that. Get over it. You lost. That's it. Like, if he would just say that and put it to bed.
Well, they all complain that Hillary Clinton claimed that her loss was illegitimate. Al Gore actually went to court to prosecute his loss because it frankly was illegitimate. They all screwed up that election really badly. John Kerry said the election was, there was some fraud in one of the states. I can't remember which one. It's sour grapes. Not literally everyone. Romney and McCain lost very gracefully.
You know the biggest difference?
What? Kamala lost gracefully this time. Good for her.
The biggest difference is that Americans who heard President Trump's rallying cry that the election was stolen from him then proceeded to, upon their own will, which I agree with you, storm the Capitol. Okay?
Yeah, and we put them all in jail.
No, and then Trump pardoned them all, basically excusing their behavior.
They'd serve some jail.
He's excusing the behavior. And so that's the biggest difference, is that the country is actually inflamed by a lie that he knows. I mean, I'm not going to say the man's incompetent. He understands. He's a president, so he knows that he lost the election. He has to know by this point. Even if you truly believe that he thought that he actually was stolen from him years ago, he knows right now. We have enough intelligence to tell us by the Heritage Foundation that he didn't get stolen from him.
He thinks the interference from tech companies that's his view, that he thinks it was stolen in that way. Well, that's what I'm not responsible for what he thinks. I'm just telling you that's when asked to defend those claims, that's what he turns.
That's what he's basing or Steve Bannon is basing wanting ICE at polling stations all about, and it's a lie. So we have to reel it in.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz visited Capitol Hill on Wednesday and was grilled by lawmakers over his state's fraud scandal. Stay with us.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz testified before the House Oversight Committee on Wednesday, facing tough questions centered around the welfare fraud scandal that has rocked the state for several months.
Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan got into a testy exchange with Walz as he accused the governor of hiding behind a court order to explain why the state resumed payments to one of the nonprofits involved in the fraud, and Jordan suggested that Walz was afraid that blocking the payments would lead to backlash from the state's Somali population.
And the behavioral intervention program went from $3 million to $400 million in 5 years. The housing stabilization went from $2.6 million to $104 million. The integrated community supports went from $4.6 million to $170 million in 3 years. And this is unbelievable what's happening. And you're trying to hide behind some pretend court order, some court order that didn't exist. And I just want to know if you know how many of the 98 people who have been indicted in your state are Somali.
I don't. Their ethnicity is not my concern.
85% of the people indicted were Somali American. Key voting bloc, and I think that's what drove this whole thing.
House Committee Chair James Comer brought up similar concerns, but Walz blasted the Trump administration for withholding Medicaid funding from the state of Minnesota. Take a look.
Chairman, if I could mention what a stop payment meant by what the administration did last week is 400,000 children without health care. Are you stopping payment of one person?
We believe that's your fault and the Attorney General's fault, because you do nothing about fraud, even though everyone in America sees
our Medicare error rate is lower than your state.
Fraud. You have been defrauded. You have not been good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. And the Democrat position is, well, keep the money flowing. The American taxpayers have had enough.
Later on, there was this viral moment between Walz and Representative Nancy Mace.
I hope you learned some lessons from your last hearing with me on the Oversight Committee. Have you learned anything since then?
I did, that if I didn't speak up, 2 of my people would be dead, Congresswoman, and I warned you.
Okay, Miss Governor Walz, what is a woman? Have you learned that lesson? Do you know what a woman is?
I'm the governor of Minnesota, Congresswoman.
know what a
I'm not
woman
here
is?
to be your prop for your
Okay,
obsession.
so
I
if you
taught middle
can't
school your
define what a
obsession.
woman is, you certainly can't define what fraud is. If you can't even define what a woman is, you can't define fraud.
After the hearing was over, the Oversight Committee put out a statement making it clear they were not satisfied with the governor's testimony. The statement says, during today's hearing, lawmakers emphasized that whistleblower testimony and information gathered by the committee now shows Governor Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison were aware of widespread fraud in Minnesota's social services program, lied about their knowledge of fraud, and retaliated against state employees who bravely raised concerns. Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison testified today and repeatedly failed to provide lawmakers and the American people with a clear explanation of how such rampant fraud was allowed to flourish under their watch.
They got exactly what they want. These hearings are for, on both sides of the aisle, people to clip out sound bites and go fundraise. We got it.
Oh,
There's
now you're skeptical of these.
No, I on both sides. I said the same thing when Kristi Noem was attacked at the hearing. I'm like, okay, this is for fundraising. But the point is that there's truth on both sides. Tim Walz completely dropped the ball as far as like letting his state get defrauded in the way that it did. That doesn't mean that the administration or federal government should retaliate by withholding healthcare funding for people in the state of Minnesota that actually live and reside there. That's not right. That was Tim Walz's claim right there, saying that children are not going to be able to access the care they need. And not just children. We talked about a variety of people that need care that are now not having access or having long wait times because they have to be penalized for Tim Walz's bad leadership. that's not okay. Tim Walz has stepped out of the position.
Pressure on Tim Walz.
Yeah, he's leaving the position.
He's still the governor right now, to put pressure on him to fix the fraud.
And he received that pressure because in December of last year, he put together a task force to get to the bottom of this. I said at that point, and I'll say again, it was too little too late, but he's already doing something. What more do you want him to do? Name the things, because they're just berating this man so that they can have a clip for their social media. But what do you want him to do? You shouldn't make the people of Minnesota suffer.
Hearings are just
but why are the people of Minnesota having to suffer because Tim Walz had bad leadership? And he's already saying that he's working on fixing it. Yeah, but so they should suffer? I mean, the country voted for Trump, and we still don't want to suffer. Nobody wants to be in a war right now. Nobody wants to be broke right now. Okay, we shouldn't all suffer because of bad choices made by politicians.
The money is from all the taxpayers collectively, and so we need to know that it's going to the right places.
You know what? Thousands of people have been indicted already for alleged COVID fraud. Hundreds of people are serving approximately 31 or more months behind bars for all the fraud during COVID. Fraud was rampant in every single Republican and Democratic state before or right after COVID, right? And everyone should be prosecuted. We're on the same page right there. I don't think that people should suffer because the federal government wants to target specifically Minnesota.
They were not prosecuted because they were Somalian. That's what James Comer
We can look into that. I don't have a problem with anybody investigating Tim Walz. I'm saying that the people of the state shouldn't have to suffer because Republicans have some weird vendetta when fraud was rampant across the country. I mean, out of control in ways that we haven't seen historically because of the way that the federal government opened up the access to money and loans at the time during the pandemic because it was an unprecedented emergency. And so, here's where we are, cleaning up the mess after COVID. There's a lot of mess to clean up. And I'm not saying that Tim Walz wasn't in the wrong. I just told you he has a lot to work on. And he tried to do something in December, which was late. But I don't think the people of Minnesota need to suffer because of bad decisions made after COVID, which was an unprecedented time in our history. And most states dropped the ball during that time.
I don't want anyone to suffer, but I also don't want to I don't want public tax dollars going to people when we can't account for how it's being spent and if it's spent appropriately.
Yeah, but it didn't just happen in Minnesota. So we should be looking at
bring
in every single governor.
Oh, don't get me started.
Let's do it. Bring in
a lot of payments.
Bring in every single governor. I don't think that we should be.
Let's just put a pause on Medicare entirely.
No, that's not what I said. I said that was the wrong thing to do. I said if you want to bring
you said there's
governors
other fraud,
so if you want to bring governors forth for testimony,
of the situation until we know what's
I said that's the wrong response. Shutting down any type of healthcare access is the wrong response. The right response may be to bring all these Republican governors and Democratic ones like Tim Walz to the forefront to answer questions about why so much fraud happened in their states during the pandemic.
Well, the right answer to the question, what is a woman, is I think you're supposed to say it's an adult human female.
Why would we want to ask that question in this context? Again, he's
did
not
think
leaning
it was
into
a
the
little
idea.
random
It was
for
random.
that
It was
to
random.
come
And
up
you criticize
there.
Nancy Mace in any other setting about her erratic behavior, but this time it was fine for you.
No, I didn't know. I thought it was a little.
It was ridiculous. Come on, that's a ridiculous question in this context. Like, we can actually get to the bottom of.
We got to be serious here.
But we can get to the bottom of this fraud. Was a real big deal, specifically for Republicans.
I mean, Tim Walz is a major cultural liberal. He's super, into all that stuff. So I think that's why it came up, but it wasn't very germane to the conversation they were having.
Germane, I like that word.
Yeah, I would say it was not time for that.
Thank you.
There's a time and a place for that.
There is a time and place for everything. And there's a time and a place. There's never a time and a place that people shouldn't be able to access basic health care, I don't think. So maybe the federal government should consider turning things back how they were and allowing Tim Walz to clean up his mess without the people of Minnesota.
I think they should
suffering.
consider taking fraud more seriously from the get-go, and we wouldn't find ourselves in this position.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. bringing his fight for healthy food back to his family's hometown, the Boston breakfast staple, in crosshairs coming up. We'll be right back. Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., has a new fast food target, and it's causing some anger in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Last week, during an Eat Real Food rally in Austin, Texas, he blasted, among others, Boston's beloved breakfast chain Dunkin' Donuts, suggesting that his agency may pull its product if they can't be proven to be safe. Take a listen.
And we're going to ask Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks, show us the safety data that show that it's okay for a teenage girl to drink an iced coffee with 115 grams of sugar in it. I don't think they're going to be able to do it.
That jab at the New England coffee staple prompted major backlash online. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey posted this photo on X, challenging Secretary Kennedy to come and take it. Several other users posted a version of the "Don't Tread on Me" flag that read, "Donut tread on me." Love that. One even referenced the Boston Tea Party, warning Kennedy, quote, "We take drinks very seriously in New England."
Ron Pawkowski even joined in, writing, "Now he's coming for Dunkin' Donuts. This means war." And former White House COVID czar, Dr. Ashisha Jha, responded to the news, "Everyone is on the side of Dunkin'. If there's too much sugar in some iced coffees, that's between Dunkin' Donuts and the customer. Would recommend outsiders not mess with Dunkin'."
I'm relieved to hear a Democrat say that, because actually this is helpful to remember that, for all the affection our MAGA and some Republicans have for RFK Jr. due to his activities during COVID, the man was a lifelong Democrat until 5 minutes ago. He is from the family most associated with the single family most associated with the Democratic Party, maybe other than the Clintons. And his lifelong career crusade was banning unhealthy foods, more environmental regulation, more energy regulation, more lawsuits against medical companies. That's all Democrat stuff. Republicans, I thought, were the party that was like, again, you can come and take our unhealthy foods from our cold, dead hands. When Michelle Obama wanted to make school lunches more healthy, Republicans correctly, me too, threw a fit. There was that California state senator or state bill, trying to ban sugary sodas, all that stuff. That was all Democrat stuff. This is Democrat stuff. We're not, he's autonomous from Trump, but the administration should tell him to cool it on that. If people are drinking sugary drinks or eating too many donuts, it's really not the government's business. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say.
America is a pretty unhealthy country. It's unfortunate when you look at other countries, a little bit better with the health. We have a huge overweight population. So having him do this is some of the Make America Healthy Again stuff that I'm not too opposed to. I do think that it's up to the consumer to decide to willingly go purchase something that's sugary for their child, or a child to go do that. But when you talk about school lunches and some of the things that Michelle Obama was going to do, some people rely on eating that. That's why they have the free lunch program or free breakfast. And so their parents just send them to school hoping that they get let's say milk and whatever. But sometimes it's just pizza and some unhealthy French fries. And it's well, if you don't have the capacity, which is unfortunate in this country, to cover your kids' meal expenses, and the school helps you out in that way.
She was
you would
taking
hope
that
they
she was reducing.
Yes, you would have more healthy options.
Okay.
That's we would like kids to be healthy, right? We want to start them off
Well, then
healthy.
it's just,
So I don't.
what's healthy starts to get a little.
It doesn't. In other countries, they don't have red dyes in their foods. We still do because we are greedy.
Okay, teenage
Like,
boys
we are
who
greedy.
are on sports teams can't subsist on 2 sticks of carrots for lunch.
That wasn't
okay?
the option.
They need carbs.
You're exaggerating.
They need...
That wasn't the option. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I think there's a balanced meal, and doctors will tell you what a balanced nutritionist, matter of fact, will tell you what a balanced meal looks like. And it shouldn't just be like, oh, boys will be boys. They should just eat 20 pizzas. Like, no, it's not healthy. Don't you want healthy kids to grow up in healthy? Don't you want healthy adults in this society? You don't want people dying of heart attacks when you don't want people dying of high cholesterol. Like, we can avoid these things at a young age. And this is the part that RFK is trying to do to help people be a little bit healthier. I'm sure if we look at some other countries that do have a lot of the changes we have in America, the ingredient usage is different, specifically in places like the Middle East. They're very strict about what people can eat. And I know they're strict about a lot of things. Okay, so then they might be healthier.
About women showing their faces, but
fine, but we should
import that to our culture.
So why can't we take what makes sense to keep us healthier and rid ourselves of the other things that we don't like? What's wrong with that? Why would you argue against people being healthier? Like, if there's a sugar that tastes...
Talk about, that's a unfair...
No, that's what you said. Like, kids in school, they should eat the 20 pizzas. I'm like, oh, no, if you can mix some more health in there, that's good. If you could get active...
If they're physically active, it doesn't matter as much.
That's a lot of... I think Michelle Obama's whole thing was let's move. Like, what do you mean? She was talking about that activity, too. So making a broad statement about her talking about the food, you're not encompassing the whole program. RFK's not doing a bad thing here. He's trying to look out for us eating the healthiest versions of things, and other countries are already implementing some of the things that he's looking into. So why does America have to be the least healthy because we want to be the most greedy?
Because we're a free country.
No, it's not right, though. We should have access to healthier, like the Doritos in the UK taste as good as the Doritos here. They don't have not even half. They don't have the same ingredients. So why do we have to suffer?
Let me finish. Let me say something. We subsidize some of the less healthy, like for instance, we have massive subsidies for corn. So there's a lot of corn syrup and everything. I would end those subsidies. There's a lot of just where the government doesn't have to nudge the use of healthier products. They should just stop whatever government policy makes it easier and cheaper for them to use the less healthy product. We could start with that.
So you're on board. This is some bipartisan negotiation right now.
That I'm on board with, but I'm not really. I can't even pretend that I'm on board with the health secretary, railing against donuts or whatever, because it's not his job. That's
when people look back and they realize all the health effects they have in their elderly years, and you think they look back and say, if I had a choice to cut the sugar and live 10 more years, would they take it when they look at their life?
Probably not.
We gotta end here. They would choose to end like
no. There's a lot more I could say on that. That does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so you never miss any content. For those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you later.